Saint Matthew Passion. That's a piece from Bach. You know that piece?
I do know that piece.
What would you say if I told you that I know that entire piece by heart?
What?
I used to be in a choir, something not very many people know about me. Started off doing a cappella with my buddies, but eventually became part of the Princeton High School Choir. And we traveled to Europe several times. And one of those trips, we performed Bach's St. Matthew Passion at the Berliner Dome. We were the first American group ever to sing there, and I sang the St. Matthew Passion with my Princeton High School choir in Germany. Are you impressed?
That's awesome. I'm super impressed. That makes me really happy. Yeah.
I was a tenor.
You were a tenor? I can hear that actually. Yeah.
I probably still am.
I would have totally classed you as a tenor. Yeah.
Well, there you go. So I just wanted you to know that about me ahead of time. You might have a little bit of respect for me. Yeah.
I do. Well, I have respect for you anyway, but this is great.
Yeah.
I do not know Bach's St. Matthew Passion by heart. I do know it. I've done it, but I certainly don't know it by heart. So that's awesome.
Yeah, by heart might be a little bit of a stretch. Like, I don't want anyone coming up to me and actually putting me on the spot, but
I would like to hear measure 30. Yeah, no.
Okay, all right. Let's do a podcast. You ready?
I'm ready.
Hey, Unlock listeners. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leader in business-grade smart property solutions designed for rental properties. Point Central's technology helps you increase property safety, reduce operational costs, and improve guest satisfaction. Head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Rental Guardian. With over 1 million property owners, thousands of property managers, hundreds of software partners and counting, Rental Guardian is arguably the most complete and trusted travel and damage protection platform in the industry. You can learn more at rentalguardian.com. And AirDNA, the vacation rental industry's leading provider of data and analytics. By tracking the daily performance of over 10 million listings on Airbnb and Vrbo, AirDNA delivers powerful insights to help hosts, managers, and investors thrive in their vacation rental markets. You can head over to airdna.co to learn more. Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
Just Guy in this case.
What do you mean just Guy in this case?
Oh, Tammy's off in our state capital shopping for supplies.
Okay.
We live a little remotely. Every once in a while, got to make a big stock up.
So she has left you to do the podcast introduction.
She has left me to do the podcast introduction. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. In fact, on the morning that this podcast episode will be airing, I'm doing something pretty cool.
Oh yeah? What's that?
Well, one of the individuals in the group that I have been swimming with, her name is Merle, and she is Estonian. She used to be on the Estonian national swim team, and she will be attempting a world record for, get this, longest distanced swim using a mermaid fin.
Okay, let me get this straight. Merle from the Estonian national swim team will be attempting the world's longest swim using a mermaid fin.
And it will be a 20-kilometer swim, and she needs fellow swimmers to join and keep her motivated. So I will be doing just that. I will not be wearing my mermaid fin, but I will be rooting her on. Isn't that cool?
Yes, that's amazing. Will you be taking your trident?
Yeah, I might bring a trident now that you mention it. I haven't used my trident in quite some time.
Well, I'm very excited for you.
You want to talk about Sara Franzen?
Yeah. That has absolutely no tie-ins whatsoever to our podcast guest this week, but we're very excited to talk about her. We've got someone who's actually a technician, someone who I think can teach us some really practical skills that are much needed in this industry.
Yeah.
We've been hearing a little bit about, dynamic pricing and stuff like that when we go to these conferences. We've met some of the people selling technology in that space. but we haven't really known a whole lot more about the bigger world of revenue management. And personally, I was pretty interested to hear Sara explain that revenue management is a lot more than just dynamic pricing and get into all the nitty gritty details.
Yeah, that was a fantastic summary. I was also intrigued because I didn't know much about it myself. But my big takeaway is that having a smarter revenue strategy is a way to, like, a lot of managers are leaving money on the table and they don't have that kind of strategy in place. There are some little tactical things that they can be doing that don't require this big elaborate team, but there are also some bigger strategies that, if they do have the resources, can just make a lot more money. I mean, this is the future of vacation rentals. This is something that hotels have been doing forever, and it's really time for us to step up and capitalize. So, with that, you want to wish me luck or something, or should we just hit play?
I say good luck on the mermaid swim, and let's hit play on the podcast.
Sara Franzen is the Director of Revenue Management and Analytics at Natural Retreats, which is a luxury vacation rental management company with hundreds of stunning properties throughout the United States. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of makeshift solutions and problem solving in a young industry like vacation rentals, and we're going to talk about turtles. Sara Franzen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to hear we're talking about turtles.
That's right. I wanted to spring that on you at the very last minute. A little birdie told me that you have a little turtle.
I do. His name is Ernest, and Ernest is actually a female, but we really liked the name Ernest when we named him, and we didn't know that it was a female. So Ernest is just Ernest, even though Ernest is a female. But that's okay.
Okay, that's why I said he. I actually didn't even know that his name was Ernest, but it's a pretty brilliant name. And how long have you had him now?
Well, about a year, just over a year. Yep.
Okay. And was this an adoption sort of thing, or go to the pet store?
No. I'm actually very much opposed to taking animals out of the wild. However, he was found on the property of one of my husband's students, and they didn't know anything about turtles, and so they put him in a bucket of dirt. He's an aquatic turtle, by the way. They put him in a bucket of dirt, which is not good for aquatic turtles, and they kept him there for a couple weeks. And so when I got my hands on him, he was not super well. So the plan was to rehabilitate him and set him free again, but we took him to the vet, and the vet said that would probably not be a good idea, because I'm assuming she meant that he would be hawk food. And so I didn't want him to be hawk food, so he is now our pet and has been with us for a year.
Sara Franzen, the turtle rescuer. That's a beautiful thing. And Ernest, I'm looking forward to meeting him one of these days.
Yes, he would love to meet you.
Sara, I have heard wonderful things about you from a number of people over the years. I have never met you actually in person that I'm aware of, unless it was like at a conference drinking event at some point. And this pandemic for me has been a chance to sit down and talk with some people in the industry whose work I've been following yet never quite gotten to meet. And so I'm kind of curious, pre-vacation rental revenue management wisdom, what were you doing before all of this? Like, did you go to school to study vacation rental management and turtle curation, or did you do something else?
No, I actually was in hotels just prior to vacation rentals. Started out in sales and business development, and then moved into revenue management. So no, I did not go to school.
I noticed you had 3 degrees. Who has 3 degrees?
I actually went to school for music and business. So I have, so I studied music, performance, and then business analytics. And then the idea was that I was going to have a music school, which I did. And so that just kind of morphed.
You had a music school?
I did, in Georgia.
What? That's amazing. What age students?
Oh, they were like toddlers through adults. So we had group classes for the children, and we taught classes, private and group classes all the way through adults.
That's incredible. So that was your early career. Did you envision yourself doing that forever, or was what took a turn?
Maybe not forever, but I thought about it in college. I think I would like to do this. Um, so that was the goal. It wasn't right away when I went to school and decided to be a music major. My dad gently um, suggested that maybe I look at something in addition to music. So that's when I added the business. And then I really liked numbers. And so there was a program, a business analytics program, and I loved that. So I kind of went those two directions. And then in the process, I just thought, hey, that would be really cool to have a music school. And so from about junior year on, that was something that I thought, that's what I'd like to do. So when I had an opportunity, I did.
Wow. And so I'm trying to envision what the jump was like, because music school is one world, and then hotel world is completely another. How did you make that transition?
I was teaching school. I was teaching middle school choral music and general music in middle school. And my daughter at the time was just a little thing. She was a kindergartner, and I decided to take a year off because I wanted to be able to be the room mom and go on field trips and do everything. So my school was really cool in giving me a year sabbatical.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's not really truly a sabbatical, but that's how I explain it. And so I took the year, and at the end of the year, I said, no, I'm going to be this super mom. And so I didn't go back. And then not long after that, her dad and I split. And so we decided, hey, we're going to be these cool co parents together. And by that time, my job at the school was gone. So I had to look for something else. And wouldn't you know, there's such thing as hotel sales. And I was like, I don't want to sell a hotel. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, I couldn't do that. So I knew nothing about hotels or hospitality or anything. But I went and applied for this job because I had to get a job. And I talked to this guy, and he was like, yeah, I'll give you a chance. And I was like, okay, cool. And that was how
But
got into hotels.
up until this point, your entire CV was like music and education, right?
Yeah, yeah, for
That's
sure.
awesome. I love how he kind of like was willing to gamble on you.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, well, you had a school, you had your own business, and and I did talk about, kind of how I had to sell my school and a lot of that. So he was like, all right, cool, you're hired.
That's amazing. Okay, what's this guy's name? We got to give him a shout out.
His name is Dale.
Okay, shout out to Dale. So,
Go
what were
Dale.
you doing at these early hotel gigs?
I was director of sales, so I kind of oversaw the different segments that we were selling, overnight segments and F&B, catering, that kind of thing. So I really loved the corporate segment, and so I kind of that was something that I really learned to love. I didn't totally love the F&B catering side. That was not really me. But I loved the corporate. That was fun. And then I had these cool revenue calls, these RevMax calls that we called them back in IHG land.
What's
And I was
IHG?
like, the parent company of like Holiday Inn.
Okay.
It's the IHG parent company. But anyway,
Okay.
so I participated as a director of sales. I participated in these revenue calls, and I was like, I want to do that. I don't want to talk to people and stuff. I want to I want to do the numbers stuff.
Well, that's a very intriguing reaction, because a lot of people see those numbers like, okay, this is probably going to be the most boring part of the entire meeting. But you were drawn to it. Had you always been good with numbers?
Yeah, that was kind of always my jam. I like numbers, and I don't want to say I don't like people because that's not true. I like certain people, um, but I, the interpersonal interaction thing was never really kind of my favorite thing.
Hmm.
Numbers don't talk back. Numbers are just what they are, and so I liked the numbers.
Right.
So yeah.
And so how did you end up making your way into the revenue management field there? Did you just express that you wanted to learn more about it, or?
I did. So when I was working for with IHG, they the that particular revenue manager worked for IHG. So they didn't work for my management company or anything like that. So that was a little bit harder for me to kind of get into that to learn more because, you know, didn't really work together. So I eventually I went to a Hilton property, and at the Hilton property, they were looking for somebody who could kind of take on a part-time revenue management role because they wanted to they didn't want to have the Hilton revenue manager. They wanted to have somebody within the management company. And I was like, ooh, that's me. I want to do that.
And why would they have wanted that kind of revenue manager as opposed to the Hilton one?
Um, I think, well, I mean, one, when you have a brand revenue manager, they oftentimes manage, well, they always manage a variety,
Tons
tons
of
of them,
them.
right? And
Right.
I think that there's something to be said about wanting to have somebody that works just for you or works for your company and
Right.
has, a single interest. So this company wanted that, and they wanted to try it. They weren't sure because they'd always had the brand revenue manager. So I was thinking, well, this is great. This is a chance for me to kind of get my feet wet and me to figure out if this is something I really like. Um, and so they gave me the opportunity, and I did director of sales, and I was also my own revenue manager, which I do not recommend in general. So that was a huge conflict of interest. So I would not recommend that in general. However, I feel like it was pretty successful. But that's how I got my feet wet with revenue management, and from there on, it was just that's what I wanted to do.
And okay, so when you say that you wouldn't recommend that, what you meant was you wouldn't recommend trying to take on two jobs, one of which is revenue management. Is that right?
Kind of, sort of. Well, the two jobs part was difficult because you're supposed to be half time one and half time the other, and that just never really works.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
there's that. But then also there should be, I believe, kind of this healthy tension between sales and revenue management and marketing.
Ooh, talk to me about that.
When you're a salesperson, and I'm speaking right now just hotels, strictly hotels, you have sales goals. You're trying to hit those goals, and you're doing everything you can to hit those goals, those revenue goals, sales and revenue goals. And when you're a revenue manager, your job is to optimize the revenue. So when you've got somebody who on one end, is just trying to make the sale, and then you've got somebody else who's trying to optimize the revenue, there's just this weird sort of if it's the same person, there's kind of a weird sort of manipulation that can happen. Like, oh, maybe I'll just lower the rates.
Yeah, it's like you're almost like trying to trick yourself or
Yeah,
something.
because it's like on one end you're accountable for your sales, and on the other end you're accountable for maximizing revenue. So it's like you're in cahoots with each other, and you're also at each other's. I don't know. It's just kind of this weird thing. I think it was successful for where I was, because I was really trying to learn and I wanted to be successful in both. But I think that it could have been really dangerous, and it can be dangerous if you've got the same person doing the both roles.
So the advice here is if a company has somebody doing both of those jobs, they may not realize the conflict there.
Yeah, and conflict is a tough word because I mean there should be,
Okay, the healthy tension.
yeah, a healthy. Yeah, I do think a healthy tension, and I think that in an optimal situation, your sales team, your revenue team, your marketing team, they're all working together. But there is kind of that push and pull between all of them, mostly between revenue and sales. Um, and I think that that's good. It's kind of like holding each other accountable. It's the checks and balances of revenue management and
Right.
sales, right,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Love that. Okay, so this is kind of working you in, and I really appreciate, by the way, all the context here because I think it's important to know that you were not born a revenue management genius. you you
Oh
fell
my
you
gosh.
fell into
I am not a revenue management genius.
you fell into this department, you kind of found that you were interested in it. You started learning more. And then once you started focusing on it full time, this is still at the hotel company, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
So did you take a couple of years worth of work with them before making this jump to natural retreats?
Yeah, I worked with them, and then I moved to another company, and that was where I worked with Marriott properties. Um, and over the when you go to the different management companies or the different brands that you work with, you go through their revenue management training and whatnot. Um, it, it is so different to now, like when I look back at it now, I don't want to say it was easy because it's not easy, but it was so different than what I'm doing now. It took time to kind of build up my knowledge and build up, some confidence, because I'm not a very confident person when it comes to certain things, and revenue management was one of them. I mean, but with hotels, you kind of have this map, and you have this, okay, if this happens, then you generally do this, like these theories. Um, and so it's kind of laid out for you a lot better than in vacation rentals. But yeah, it takes time to kind of build that and to hone it. But and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole journey, the whole process in hotels.
Learning revenue management in a sort of a structured environment with these rules, like you mentioned in hotels, is a nice way to learn it. It's not like you're being thrown into the complete deep end. That is our strange, nascent industry of vacation rentals. When you moved into your role at Natural Retreats, what were some of the first obvious things that you noticed for vacation rentals and that were very different from your traditional world of hotels?
Well, I have to give my company huge props here because they hired a revenue manager 5 years ago. Um, And so I went for my interview. Oh, this is great. I've done revenue management before, looking forward to kind of this new challenge. I get there and I realize that even though they hired a revenue manager, I'm not sure they actually knew what revenue management was at the time. Um, so they were like, okay, well, we need to put these rates in. And I was like, okay, cool. But then I realized that they wanted me to put rates in. Like that's kind of what the rates person was doing, was just entering in rates. And so I was like, well, this isn't really revenue management. It was just me. And so what I was able to do over the course of 5 years is I've been able to kind of really build a program the way that I think that it should be, or the way that I've thought it should be, and then I like decide, oh, that's not the way it should be, I should do it this way. And because there wasn't really a lot of knowledge about revenue management in general in vacation rentals, they kind of let me go. They were like, oh, okay, cool. That's what we should do. I didn't really know. I still don't know. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Like I have like ideas of what I think should be done based on, what I think is pretty good data, or good, I don't even know. I mean, it's
Whatever it is, numbers.
I don't know, whatever it is. Like, I mean, you hear the news, and you hear trends of something going on here, and then you go, oh, well, I wonder how that applies to this market.
Have you ever like considered that this talent that you have developed is almost a little bit like music or art or
Yeah,
sport that people just, yeah.
for sure. I mean, that was something that I was talking to somebody. I don't know, maybe it's been a while now, but um, because they will say all the time, people will say, well, I mean, music to this, I mean, that's just crazy. But yeah, it is absolutely similar. The whole artistic side of it, the development side, the nurturing of it, everything, it's very similar to music or to any craft or any art. But again, I just kind of, to go back, I really have to. I was really impressed. I'm more impressed now when I look back at the fact that a vacation rental company had the foresight to go, you know what, we should hire a revenue manager, even if we're not exactly sure what that is. Um,
Hmm.
and that I was able to, and they trusted me. I mean, they were like, okay, well, here you go. I mean, I'm part of it was probably they didn't really know what I was doing, but at the same time, there was a level of trust there where they're like, okay,
Hmm.
go for it. And we're not at a point where things are perfect and we're super, everything is just the way it should be right now. But we've really gone through, I think, um, a really cool process, from 5 years ago to now to get where we are now, which sometimes, like I said, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a whole lot, but other times I'm really excited and proud of what we've done. So yeah, so that's just a really long answer and way of saying that, it was not revenue management in my mind when I got there. It's developed into something that looks more like revenue management now, but due to the nature of the product that we're working with, it's different than hotels or airlines, and it always will be.
So let's talk real quick about natural retreats for those who don't know it. And to be very honest, I didn't know too much about it before I started doing a little bit of research. But it is a luxury property management company. In the traditional sense, does it have people on the ground who are managing these homes throughout the country?
Yep, it does. So we have local folks in every one of our markets. We think that it's important. You have to be there um, to take care of the guests personally. I mean, that's part of our, what we think distinguishes us. We talk about luxury or whatnot, but it's ultimately just that feeling, right? I mean, when you think about luxury, yeah, you might think about like a fancy car or a ultra fancy hotel, but at the core, it's how you feel when you're in them, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think it's really difficult to get that feeling when there's nobody there, right? So that's what we believe that it's important to have people in every market, and we do. And then we support our local teams and our local businesses in each market. Revenue management is one of the ways that we do that.
And I will give a shout out to whoever's in charge of marketing, because the homes on the website, they really do ooze this luxury. Like it's different than just a shiny hotel room. It really looks almost like a magazine shoot. You just want to go and
Yeah.
lounge.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who does that. You probably do that too.
No,
Huh?
no, I can't. I cannot claim credit for that. Our whole team is amazing. But yeah, I think our website's beautiful, and I think our properties are beautiful. Website is beautiful because our properties are beautiful, and because we have great stories to tell in each of our markets.
Well said. How well do you match up against your local competition? During these crazy market fluctuations, I'm encouraging managers to spend at least an hour one morning and canvass your area. What do the other homes look like? What is their nightly rates? What is their occupancy levels? One way to do this is with just a cursory glance at any major listing site. And another way to do it is to take a deep dive into the real data. This is where AirDNA comes in. You can subscribe to any city or neighborhood and you'll get access to interactive charts, dynamic pricing calendars, market comparison tools, information on your competition, and this really cool future-looking metric, which will show you how things are looking over the next 6 months. AirDNA is our go-to resource for understanding and navigating the global short-term rental market. It's a quick and easy way to benchmark your progress in these otherwise very uncertain times. Find out more at airdna.co. Let's get back to the show. I'm really curious to dive into this revenue management in vacation rentals thing because I know a lot of our listeners have either heard the phrase revenue management. They may have even been as what it would be the word foresightful, as visionary as your company, and gone out and hired a revenue manager or a team to do their revenue management before it was even a thing. Um, and there's also folks who may be using revenue managers on a regular basis very effectively. But let's just start with some of the basics. So, in short, revenue management to somebody who's not super familiar with it is what?
The science, the art of optimizing revenue for your company. And, I think it's really important to make the distinction that it is optimizing revenue, maximizing revenue, if you want to use that. It's not about making more money than you did last year. I know that a lot of our owners want that. They think that revenue management is making more than they did last year. But really, it's about, taking everything that's happening in our markets and, pandemic is a really great example of something that is happening that is not typical, and maximizing getting what you can out of that. And it's not going to necessarily mean you're going to make more. It's going to mean that you're going to get your share, and of what is available, and what your home, in this case we're talking about vacation homes, but what that home can produce, given the environment and the things going on in each individual market.
And do you say that because sometimes people hear it and they mistake it for being greedy or somehow exploiting? Because I want to give you a short background story. I used to run my own vacation rental business in Panama, and we kept our villas at a pretty steady $150 a night for like 5 years. And several colleagues were saying to me, why don't you increase your prices? You have such great demand, you have repeat business, you have earned the ability to increase your prices on a nightly basis. And I always said to them, I don't like to I don't like to exploit my guest. I want to offer them great value,
Mhm.
and I want them to have a fantastic experience. And I want to make what I think is sufficient, but I don't want to go beyond that. But I now, in hindsight, now that I see so many wonderful revenue manager people like you, have realized that it's maybe not about, it's not like either you exploit your guest or you make
Right.
extra money. It's like, how do you describe that to people who are maybe have had reservations about doing it?
I think the first thing to say is that it's each company is different. So, as the person that you were in Panama, if that was your goal, was to, you didn't care about making more every year, you thought that that was part of your thing that you did, then I'm certainly not going to be the one to argue and to push back at that. I think that everybody has different goals, for their company. And so that's the first thing that I would say. The second
Yep.
thing is that, I don't see rate increases, or in some cases, rate decreases, um, as reflective of how I feel about my customer, as much as it is a response to the market and what's currently happening. I mean, there are
Mm.
plenty of times when you're going to be reducing rates in your shoulder or your off seasons to try to capture whatever demand there is there. If there's,
Mm-hmm.
not much, you're not going to, if a pandemic happens, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe not quite a pandemic, but if something happens in a market that all of a sudden sees a huge drop in demand, you might be looking at lowering rates, and that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that you're being nicer to your customers. It just means that you're
Yeah.
responding to things that are happening in the market.
I wish you had told me that in 2007. I would have made so much more money. Um, so, so somebody is kind of interested in revenue management. They can attempt to begin looking at their numbers themselves. They can also use one of the many tools that are out there. Have you ever experimented with some of the tools in our industry, the dynamic pricing tools?
We've certainly looked at them, and we have really great relationships with the companies that are out there. I consider them friends in the industry, and they certainly do amazing things. And one would argue, most people might argue that having something like that is better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so if that's what your budget can allow, if that's what I certainly think that you have to look at it from what's best for my company,
Mm-hmm.
what's best for my situation. But they certainly have amazing products out there now, and they're getting better.
If somebody is considering experimenting with dynamic pricing, and is dynamic pricing synonymous with revenue management?
No.
What's the difference?
Well, revenue management is an overall strategy. I think it's a way of thinking. It's how you strategize on a large scale with revenue management. That's kind of something that is foundational in a company. Dynamic pricing is the act of changing rates in response to the market and what's going on with your competitors, and
Mm-hmm.
even against your own self. But revenue management in general is the scope is comprehensive.
Okay. And when you start chatting with somebody, I'm sure this happens all the time. You bump into another vacation rental professional, or maybe that never happens. But in our instance, like, the conferences are always funny because for the first time ever, you get to talk with somebody who has exactly the same concerns and needs as you do, and you like nerd out over revenue management. What are some of the first things that you tell somebody that stuff that you have learned over these years to keep an eye on? Is there anything that really stands out as big advice?
I mean, I think the biggest is that it's because we're not hotels, we're not airlines, we are so different. Every company is different. I would be doing a disservice to tell anybody to do A, B, or C because it worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to. I mean, everybody has a different makeup on their portfolio. They have different kinds of owners with different expectations. That's something that I think is really fundamental, I think, to me and how I believe that revenue management should be considered in this environment. And that is that there's no one answer. It might be, it
Mm-hmm.
might make perfect sense for you to use a dynamic pricing tool. It might, for somebody else, make absolutely no sense. And there's
Mm-hmm.
obviously middle ground. So, really do the research based on who your owners are, what your business goals are, what your not just your business goals, but your business model. How does your
Mm-hmm.
business function, and then make those decisions based on all of those things, because you're going to be the most successful when your considerations include a bunch of different things, not just
Mm-hmm.
what works for somebody else. And I think that's that's probably the case for just about everything in life, but certainly for this.
So, am I right getting this right that revenue management is kind of the strategic overarching theme? Dynamic pricing is one of the tactical activities that falls underneath it.
Yep, it's a component.
So, what are some of the other activities? What are some of the other tactical activities that fall under revenue management?
So if we're going to kind of separate it the way that you did with dynamic pricing, I mean, there's so much more in terms of, it's not just a price.
Mm-hmm.
You've got levers that are, length of stay. You've got arrival departure days, um, and those are all things that it used together kind of help give you those yielding tactics,
Mm-hmm.
that we lump under the science or the art of revenue management. But again, I think revenue management, going back to something we talked about earlier, it is something that's overarching because it includes other departments. I mean, you can't have a revenue management strategy without also including your sales team and your marketing team and the folks on the ground. I mean, everybody has to have this um, understanding and buy-in to the end goal, which is to optimize revenue. Because if you're like most, I think, revenue or vacation rental companies, you make money when your owners make money. Your owners make money when you make money. So there is this partnership between us and the owners, between us and the other departments in our company, um, and that's how I think you develop a good revenue management strategy, because you have a shared goal, a shared purpose, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that is ultimately what's going to inform your strategy. The yielding tactics, all of those things, yeah, you've got to be able to pivot if you need to, and change your tactics, but to achieve the single universal goal that everybody's trying to accomplish. So I think it definitely is more than just rates and restrictions, but that's a big part of it.
I think that's really helpful for anyone who's listening. Really being clear and defining exactly what that goal is from a revenue management standpoint acts as a great uh, magnetic north on the compass, so that both your teammates, your owners, and anybody who's part of a decision can see that that's the direction that everybody is rowing in, and really help clarifies a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things. When you, Sarah, you say you have all these levers and buttons, I envision you sitting at your desk there, like a rocket ship technician. When you have the largest shift in travel trends in the history of a generation in this form of this pandemic come across your desk, what are some of the first things that you begin thinking about from a revenue management perspective in terms of adapting, especially across all these different markets that you guys have properties in?
Well, I think the first thing, and this is something that I try to keep in mind whether there's a pandemic or not, and that is that revenue management is a long game. It's not something where you throw your entire strategy out the window because of it. Now, obviously, there are going to be a lot of things that you have to change and tweak. The goals are probably different. If you were trying to achieve X before pre-pandemic, that might not be possible now. So you're going to have to shift a little bit, but the goal is always optimization. So you're always trying to optimize your revenue given those situations, and you're not going to know those things. You're not, I mean, if you'd asked, you know, a month and a half ago, I was trying to forecast, which is like the biggest joke ever. But there is value in going through some of the processes and the steps that are quote unquote normal to try to uncover things that you may not have that you wouldn't see otherwise. And I think that while forecasts now even are just, I don't know, probably not worth the paper they're printed on. It's a good practice, and I think that that is something that's really important with revenue management too. It is a practice, and it is something that you have to stick with. It's anything you want to be good at, you have to stick with. But there are things that I've found even in doing some of my forecasts where I'm like, I know this isn't really going to work, but there's still value there. And I think that when we start talking about, oh well, how are things going to change with this pandemic, what are you doing differently, there are things that I'm doing differently. I'm looking at different data now. I'm looking at outside data that other people are producing, which is really awesome. We've got so many companies out there that are, putting data out there for public consumption for use.
Give some plugs. Who do you like?
Key data. I love key data. Yay, key
Okay.
data.
Shout out to Key Data.
Yeah, they've put some really cool stuff out there on LinkedIn, on their website, about various markets across the country. And even if I'm not specifically in one of the markets they're looking at, I think that some of those stories are really telling. Mountain markets versus beach markets. And you can really see kind of what's going on. And then you can compare that to what you've got. And you might not have a quote unquote forecast, but you might have a better understanding of what's happening. I've really loved seeing some of the stuff that they've put out there for everyone to view. Some of the webinars have been really great. I know I'll keep throwing them out there. Rented has done some really great revenue management webinars with Anurag from Price Labs. I mean, all of these groups, I mean, they are all working together to really try to put out some valuable, helpful information out there that might not, if you look at it, well, it's not my market or it's not specifically what I'm doing, but it gives you those benchmarks that I think are really helpful for you when you're applying it to your situation, your market.
Explain what you mean by stories, because this is something I've heard data and revenue people talk about. They say, got to find the stories, but I don't really understand what they're talking about. Explain to me what a newcomer who is looking for stories, what does that mean?
I think stories is just maybe a fancy way of saying trends, or um, things that are going on that may or may not be going on. I guess stories are just that. I don't want to say that they're fictional, that they're made up, but you have to take numbers. Numbers don't lie; they're the black and white. But there's a lot you have to pull out of that may or may not be correct.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong a lot of the time, and I'm okay with being wrong as long as when I'm wrong or when I'm making decisions or I'm coming up with the story, that it's based on something that is real. Um, so then when you are wrong, you can pivot and you can say, okay, well, this didn't work, so I'm going to do something else. And telling the story with data is really just trying to figure out what the data is telling you. And you're not always going to be right. And data sometimes is just a bunch of numbers, and maybe it's not telling you a story.
And I'm guessing it's your job to then interpret it all. And the story then becomes your ability to communicate it to like your teammates, for instance.
Right. It's the ability to create, insightful action steps from this data. Yeah, and we're going to be wrong sometimes, but we're going to take what we can with this data and create these, stories or suggestions, ideas, things, and turn them into actionable insights for our team, so that sales can go and sell these, so that marketing can push the right thing, and so that we can price things correctly, or restrict or not restrict things correctly.
Could you give us an example of a story that you recently concluded and that would be like actionable for somebody listening?
One of the great things is that Florida is now opening up, so we're super happy about that. um, it would have been a real bummer if we'd have gone into the summer and couldn't sell vacation rentals. um, so Florida's opening up, but one of the things I was looking for this whole time was, signs of life, because obviously we knew that when the restrictions were lifted, the stay-at-home orders and all that stuff, when that was lifted, we were pretty sure that people were going to start coming back. But then there was also kind of that, like, I don't know if they're going to start coming back. Are people going to be too nervous? So we track things like I said, with key data. I've got a lot of their kind of general Florida information. So when we start seeing signs of bookings picking up, or when we can see some of our search stuff, Google Analytics has some amazing stuff that I know our marketing team is very much in tune with. And when we start seeing things that are either spikes, or they're looking like we're starting to normalize somewhere, and those are different things. I can't necessarily say, oh, well, you're going to see a spike in bookings, and then that means everything's back to normal, because that's not the case. But you're going to see those peaks and valleys, and when you start
Hmm.
seeing things plateau, or when you start seeing things, that those are indicators for us that we're looking for. And maybe indicator is better than story, because I tend to look for trends. And 2 weeks of something being one way isn't necessarily a trend, but maybe 3 or 4 is. And that's where kind of the art comes in with revenue management. And is this really what we're seeing, or is this kind of just this weird anomaly?
Right. You have the instinct. And I think a lot of people listening to this, they have that instinct in some other hospitality aspects. So, like, I've noticed that a lot of experienced managers are able to sniff out a problem guest in the
Hmm.
inquiry process. Like, the little red flag goes up. It's like, okay, I know this is not going to be a good fit for our business. Or a lot of people are able to anticipate certain needs with whether it's like preemptively answering a question or putting a little gift on the counter upon arrival that they know the guest will love. That is very artsy. It's very like you got to feel that. So I think a lot of people will get what you're trying to say here with the sort of the judgment calls. Do you, when it comes to vacation rentals, you've clearly developed kind of a feel for it. Do you think that there's a certain kind of feel that can't be replaced by these tools,
Yeah.
these machines that are supposedly smarter than us? Are they smarter than you, Sarah?
Yeah. I would put money on it that they're smarter than me. Um,
They could beat you in a game of chess.
they could beat me in a game of chess. That's also hard, and I hesitate to say, yeah, humans are always better, because that's not true. But the human element is very powerful when you have the right humans. Um, I have an amazing team that I very fortunately was able to handpick. I knew all of my team before before they came to work at Natural Retreats.
Oh, really? You pulled them in from the hotel game?
One of them from hotels, yeah.
Where was the other one from? This is starting to sound like a movie. Sarah is getting the team back together to take down the big bank.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of them, yeah. So, my senior revenue manager, Carmen, she is from hotels, very similar background as me. Um, I have another revenue manager who is from the restaurant world. So, still hospitality, but with a different perspective, different experience, but very numbers driven, very analytical. And then I actually have somebody who's this is his first job out of college. He was a math major, and I really like, my team right now. Yes, computers and software could probably be quicker than them. It may even, might be right. I don't know, but the depth and the comprehensive knowledge, or potential knowledge that these guys have, I wouldn't, I wouldn't give that up for an automation right now.
That is so cool. Okay, keep going.
If I had a different team, it might make more sense. Like
Hmm.
if some of my team members were, more technical in terms of like monitoring, like seeing trends and like spreadsheets or something, like some sort of little anomaly. And actually, that's not completely fair because they are actually very good at that. Um, but if they didn't have the strengths that they have, um, in being the analytical people that they are, with the history of, um, and the experience that they have in hospitality, I might say, yeah, we should go with maybe something more automated.
Hmm.
And I think that as time goes on, automation is just going to get better, and it might be that there comes a time when we just say, you know what, it can do it better than we can, and we're going to learn how to be the best administrators of this software possible. But right now, I would take their strengths in the humanness of them, um, over that stuff right now.
There are definitely things that machines can do much more efficiently than humans. But of course, there are also activities that we prefer to do manually. The things we like to do for each guest to make them feel special, to make them feel like they're in good hands. For all those other activities that you don't want to do, the things that you're not good at, the things you don't get credit for, consider smart home automation. Point Central is the leader in business-grade smart property solutions for vacation rental properties. Their technology helps you increase property safety, reduce operational costs, and improve guest satisfaction. You can eliminate manual transfer of keys with connected door locks. You can control your heating units and air conditioning units remotely, especially for when guests are out of the home. You can avoid expensive maintenance costs with real-time alerts. For me, Point Central is one of those tools that is able to automate all the things that you don't really need to be doing so that you can focus on the activities that you get credit for. All you need to do, at least to consider the possibility of smart home automation, is head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB for a demo. If you identify the activities that you want to automate, you can then focus on all the other stuff, the stuff that really matters. Some technologies are designed to save you time. Other technologies are designed to save you big money. In today's uncertain world, managers need to protect their revenue, their guests, and the properties they manage. And Rental Guardian delivers best-in-class travel protection, damage protection, and liability protection for over 600 property managers around the world. In addition, Rental Guardian recently launched their Master Cancel program, which I call a technology. It allows you the ability to offer flexible terms and conditions to your guests, but also simultaneously protect the hard-earned revenue of your business and the property owners that you represent. Head over to rentalguardian.com to learn more and take advantage of all these tools that are designed to help us excel. First, I would just like to say that your team sounds so cool that I would love to hang out with you guys. You guys go out for team lunches.
They're super cool. Well, not lately. Um,
A lot lately, that's true. Yeah, I was envisioning you guys all around like a hibachi grill, talking about statistics and
ooh.
trends or something like that. But that said,
Yeah, no, so we do, but we don't talk about that.
we don't talk about that.
No.
Okay, so I would be the oddball in that case.
Oh.
Secondly, it's really interesting that you mentioned that because we just published an episode of the podcast with Chip Conley, which will be out by the time people are listening to this. They can go and listen to it. But Chip is kind of a hospitality guru, if you will. He really was one of the forefathers of the boutique hotel movement, and then went on to mentor Brian Chesky as the head of hospitality at an Airbnb. But Chip talked about this thing that he refers to as wisdom, but it's quite simply what he says is people's ability to spot patterns.
Mm.
And he said that comes with time. And he said that the longer you're in your business and the longer you're familiarizing yourself with numbers and these kinds of stories, as you say, the more you're able to make predictions and the more likely they are to be real. So it sounded to me like that's kind of what you guys as a SWAT team there at the office, or probably now from home, are doing. And speaking of which, I don't want to get it close to the end of this podcast without talking about what you're doing at lunchtime these days.
I am doing lunchtime music. Um, and it started out as just being something where I wanted to just get better at sight reading because it was always something that, well, I think it's generally something that most people are not as good at, which is just to take out music and to, you give yourself a limited amount of time and then you perform it. Um, and so I was like, I'm going to be a better sight reader, sight singer. So I just started taking out pieces at lunchtime. I'm working from my church because my home has really terrible internet. It might just be better than dial up. And so I drive to my church every day and I sit in a big empty church. And so there's a piano. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just learn to sight read. And so I'm going to take my lunch hour and I'm going to learn a song. And then I record it and that's it. Then I move on to another one.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's been fun.
But what about how did I stumble across this thing? Because I have to admit to you, I was doing a little stalking. I went onto Facebook and I saw your profile, and you have these amazing songs that you sing with yourself,
Yeah.
like divided into a bunch of panels, singing individual roles. Reminds me of Bobby McFerrin.
Yeah.
What is the describe this to people because it's really fascinating. They can all begin to stalk you.
Yeah, hat tip to the acapella app.
Mm-hmm.
So downloaded that and you can sing with yourself. You just like record these little squares. So I started just like I'm going to record different parts of the song because I'm only one person. I'm sitting here by myself in this big building, and so I have to do more than one. So I started just doing that, and it's just been so fun, and it's been a really great way for me to improve my sight reading abilities and also just to entertain myself because, I mean, let's face
It
it.
is super
Oh,
impressive. I was
thanks.
so impressed. I was singing along with some of your Ave Maria. And I
Ah.
would like to apologize to all the people who are listening to this like riveting revenue management conversation that I just felt the need to interrupt, talk about singing. But let's go back to my last several
Okay.
questions about revenue management. For those who are listening and are considering making that investment, whether it's hiring somebody, and by the way, I think a fantastic tip for those who maybe have tried to find a revenue manager before that weren't able to. Now is a wonderful time to hire.
Mhm.
There's a lot of companies whose revenue managers are not doing that anymore. And B, look outside of just the vacation rental sector. Look to hotels, look to restaurants like Sarah did. Maybe even look at math people. Sounds like people who are familiar with numbers. Is that a fair thing, or is that only an
Yeah.
advanced hiring tip?
No, I want a team that understands why we do things more than just like when we do something. Oh, well, this happens, this we saw this spike, so now we do this. I want people who understand why we do it.
Right.
And I think that because vacation, it's pretty new to vacation rentals. Yeah, look outside of vacation rentals if you need to. And there are a lot of unfortunately there are a lot of hotel revenue managers who are out of work right now. And not all of them are going to be as brilliant as, as Carmen or some of these
Right.
folks who have hotel backgrounds, but the folks who understand really the ins and outs, the whys, about the data that we're looking at, and how to use it, not just, the ADR is $200. Those are the people that can grow with your company. You can really, they can learn your product, learn your portfolio, learn your owners, and that's going to be the best way to, if you're looking for a real human, um, you know be creative, and be flexible with who you look at, because it's not always going to be just, that vacation rental person, because they may not have been in vacation rentals before.
So you perfectly segued into what was going to be the part two of that, which was what kind of like increase in bottom line can people expect when they've got a solid revenue management strategy and are doing some of these best practices, taking into full account that the world has been turned upside down, and that numbers probably won't get back to normal anytime soon. If numbers were normal, what kind of tangible outcomes can people expect from this kind of investment?
Yeah, I won't fall for that one.
Come on, guarantee us.
No, I think that's one of the interesting things that, I've heard over the years with, some of the automated stuff. Oh, you're going to see X% increase, or you're going to, and that's great. I would never go down that path, because I believe at my core it is about optimization, um, and because your vacation rentals are not hotels. They are not this commoditized room that is the same as every other room in the building. The demand is going to be different for each of those homes. If your portfolio changes, that demand is going to change. You know, Sometimes there's not demand for small homes. Sometimes there is, and so really to try to put a number on that, I don't think is fair at all. But I will say that, if you're doing these things, if you're getting your share, if you're getting your fair market share, um, then you're successful. And ultimately, you're going to be successful as a company if that is consistent, um, because you're going to be outperforming your competitors, and you're going to be doing it based on, you know, real data, real stuff that's going on in the market. If you're doing it right, I think. And as long as you're keeping pace with your competitors or outperforming them, you're going to be successful. And that's not going to necessarily be a number.
And is it like one of these things in which, if you don't have a revenue management strategy, or if you're not doing any of these things, once you do adopt it, it's like you could never go back to not having it? It's like a light has been turned on and you officially have entered a new age of the business? Or are there businesses that have been achieving all their goals without it?
Well, I certainly hope you're right. That once you go revenue management, you never go back. Um, but I do think that, you know I can't speak to other companies, but what I can say is that since, our company has adopted kind of this general, hey, we're this team. It's revenue management, but it's also sales, it's also marketing, it's also our business development, it's our operations. When we're all functioning and working together, there is nothing that can stop that. And if you're doing it correctly, I say correctly, that's probably rude. If you're doing it, I think, in a way that involves everybody, that is the ultimate revenue strategy. And that's not necessarily a revenue management thing. Um, we revenue management assumes some of the yielding responsibilities. But if you have a revenue strategy, you have a common goal, and you're involving your entire team, there's nothing that stops you.
Wow. Um, my head just went spinning because I've been doing businesses all this time without a revenue strategy, and I'm starting to think that I maybe should be learning about one. Does revenue management apply to any um, productized business?
I mean, I think it's obviously going to look different, but retail uses it. You know, Stadiums use it. Rental cars. I mean, but yeah, it's something. I actually use it for my husband, He's a music teacher. No, I mean, not for my husband,
I love
but
it. No, I love whatever you're about to say. I think is great.
he's a music teacher, and he's also a gigging musician. Well, not so much anymore because all the gigs are canceled, but he's a gigging musician. So what I started doing a couple of years ago is I started tracking his inquiries when people would call him to do a Christmas gig or, whatever. And I put those on a calendar, and I created him windows. When do people typically call you for Christmas gigs? And, what price are they offering? And we've started, accepting and declining gigs based on, prime booking windows.
That
Um,
is
it
incredible.
works for everything.
That is incredible. So wait, is this actually just like a little piece of paper? Have you got a proper Excel spreadsheet? Or are you
Oh, yeah,
using like your
I've
your
got
fancy
it.
software or something like that?
Yeah, no, it's an Excel. I mean, it's nothing any fancier than that,
I
but
am so impressed. That is gazillions of years beyond what all of his competitors have got at their disposal. So good on you.
I mean, when you think about the typical musician, I wouldn't deny that.
Well, maybe this is a nice little niche for somebody. Revenue management for gig musicians. Speak with Sara. Sara Franzen, you said that you were nervous because you didn't even know what a podcast was. You had never listened to one, but you just gave me such a wonderful hour of insight. And I wanted to thank you because that was really quite fun. Did you enjoy yourself? Was it nearly as scary as you say?
It wasn't nearly as terrifying as I thought it was going
Yeah.
to be. Yeah,
Yeah. That was
yeah.
wonderful.
Oh, well, thanks.
And I think it was also very insightful. I think people will really appreciate that.
Well, I hope
So
so.
I would like to thank you officially on behalf of all the Unlocked listeners for your industry leadership over the years. And I'm just happy that we finally got to chat. Next in line is to do so in person. We could do a social distancing drink, maybe sing some Ave Maria together,
Ooh, sing some Bach.
sing some
Yeah,
Bach.
you know
Yep.
St. Matthew Passion by heart,
I do.
so
I'll
yeah,
have got plenty of time to practice.
sweet.
Sara, I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Hey, you too.
I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did having it. The episode was produced by Tammy Rowe and Stuart Hooper of Mango Fish Studios. Our intro song is The Moon of Pajang by Instant Party. And if you feel inspired, please consider sharing to social media with your big takeaway. We love takeaways. They make us feel great. Lastly, if you want to receive updates, you can do so at vrmb.com/mmm. And if you want to join our virtual community of vacation rental professionals, become a member of VRMB's Inner Circle today. Until next time.